At the beginning of this week, it looked like the European Union might be turning the tide and getting a more coordinated response to the coronavirus crisis, but those hopes were dashed early this morning after the Eurozone summit failed to agree a coordinated economic response to the crisis after 16 hours of negotiations. And today, the European Commission canceled a planned unveiling of an EU-wide lockdown exit strategy after pressure from certain member states. Now, that summit last night of the Eurozone finance ministers was supposed to agree several tranches of an economic response for when these lockdowns end, but it got held up over the contentious issue of corona bonds. That's debt collectivization that Spain and Italy are asking for. They're already in debt, and they're going to have to take on new debt from international markets to prevent businesses from collapsing and keep people in employment in the coming months. The fear is that if they have to borrow at very high rates because they already have high debt, it's going to lead to another sovereign debt crisis like we saw 10 years ago. Now, this idea for Eurobonds was floated 10 years ago during the financial crisis. It was batted down by Northern European countries, notably Germany. This time around, the same thing is happening. Although Germany is softening its opposition, the big opposition is really coming from Denmark. And last night, Denmark, Austria, Finland, and Germany pushed back against this idea of debt collectivization. In turn, Italy refused to sign off on any economic response until corona bonds are agreed. Now, they're going to come back to the negotiating table tomorrow, but tensions are running so high it looks unlikely that they're going to be able to agree anything. Now, meanwhile, that press conference this morning of the Eurozone, where they were supposed to announce triumphantly an agreement, wasn't the only major press conference canceled today. The European Commission was supposed to unveil an EU-wide exit strategy for getting out of these lockdowns today, but it was abruptly canceled after France, Italy, and Spain objected. The Commission had sped up its timeline for adopting this. This was asked for by national leaders 2 weeks ago. They asked the Commission to draw up a roadmap giving guidelines for how all of these countries should end their lockdowns. Now, yesterday, the Commission said it would adopt that today. That was in response to some countries going ahead and adopting national plans on their own, preempting the Commission strategy. Austria, Denmark, and Czechia adopted national strategies on Monday. But after they made that announcement, France, Italy, and Spain said, no, do not announce that to the public yet because we have Easter weekend coming up, and they're afraid that if people hear about an eventual exit, they're going to relax and go visit family members this weekend. So the Commission has given in to that pressure and delayed the response until next Wednesday. Now, this is just guidance, and they can't force any country to do anything. So having 3 countries against it, they kind of didn't have much of a choice. But this 1-week delay could be a disaster for EU coordination because probably more countries are going to get tired of waiting. They're going to announce their own national lockdowns, and this exit from lockdowns is going to be as uncoordinated and contradictory as the entrance into these lockdowns was about a month ago. So really, it's a dark day for EU unity on this subject. Now, the countries do already have a draft form of these guidelines. Journalists have seen it as well. They say that the exits from the lockdown should be done gradually in stages. First, small shops should open, then restaurants, and then eventually mass gatherings, but that would be much later. It also sounds like travel restrictions would be loosened much later in this process. The first thing will be getting people back to work and allowing small shops to reopen. The EU also wants all these countries to coordinate their decisions, talk to their neighbors, and inform the EU about what they're doing. So when that strategy comes out next week, we could have a situation where several countries have already adopted something that is contradictory to that. So certainly those hopes that were seen at the beginning of this week are not looking so good for EU coordination by the end of the week.